Hello, I'm Jim Whitley, Dean of the John P. Burke School of Public Service and Education at Post University, and I also serve on the Community Impact Cabinet of the United Way of Greater Waterbury. And I have a question. What is the toll on children and families who can't make ends meet? That is what United Way is shining a light on in a new ALICE in Focus report. ALICE is an acronym for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, and Employed. Families and individuals who make more than the poverty level but less than the minimum threshold to make ends meet in Connecticut. United Ways have been working collaboratively for 7 years producing the ALICE report to provide reliable, accurate data on what it costs to live in our communities. The new ALICE Children Report goes even further, looking at the impact on those under 18 in those households. Although clearly struggling, many at the ALICE threshold earn too much to be eligible for public assistance. The ALICE report shines a light on the challenges of these families. Even before the pandemic, 42% of all Connecticut children lived in a household just at or below the ALICE threshold for financial survival. It takes income over $90,000 a year for a family of 4, that's 1 infant and 1 toddler, to just afford their basic needs in Connecticut. That means 4 out of 10 kids in our state were living in a home where parents were barely making ends meet each month, or in fact, falling behind. More shocking still, 41% of children in those struggling households were going hungry. That means 125,000 kids in our state didn't have enough to eat as recently as the fall of 2021. These are uncomfortable facts, and United Way is stepping to the forefront to shine a light on them. And this is not just an urban issue. Families throughout our 10-town area are living paycheck to paycheck. Having parents that work does not guarantee financial stability. I mentioned hunger as one consequence. But here is another startling fact. 34% of Connecticut households with children below the ALICE threshold budget had to miss, delay, or skip entirely their children's preventative medical checkup in the previous 12 months. While there are children below the ALICE threshold across all demographic groups, 72% of Black children and 67% of Hispanic children in Connecticut lived in households with income below the ALICE threshold, compared to 26% of white children. Having working parents or guardians does not guarantee financial stability. 21% of Connecticut children in households with 2 adults in the labor force were still below the ALICE threshold, and that was before the impact of the pandemic. Children below the ALICE threshold often lack access to resources ranging from stable housing and public assistance to education and broadband services. More than 192,000 children below the ALICE threshold in Connecticut did not participate in SNAP, and nearly 71,000 had no high-speed internet access at home. ALICE children live in all kinds of households, with married and unmarried parents, single parents, grandparents, or guardians. Children are more likely to be below the ALICE threshold when their families have fewer adults and/or adults with lower earning potential. And then came the pandemic. The ALICE report's analysis of the most recent household pulse surveys in late 2021 revealed that children and households below the ALICE threshold bear the brunt of the pandemic's physical and emotional toll. The stress, trauma, and hardship of financial uncertainties, food insecurity, interrupted learning, delayed health care, lower preschool enrollment rate is showing up in many forms, including anxiety, depression, and more. How a child starts in life impacts their long-term health, wellness, education, and career. Family financial stability is one of the strongest predictors of current and future well-being. Our United Way joined with others to hold a statewide launch of the report earlier this year, where we met Natasha, a Connecticut mother who was willing to share her story on the struggles of trying to get ahead. Let's take a few minutes to hear from Natasha, introduced by United Way of Connecticut President Lisa Tepper Bates.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Natasha McLean. And again, Natasha, we are so grateful to you for willing to be here today to share your perspective as a student and as a parent regarding what it takes to get by in the state of Connecticut. So over to you, Natasha.
Thank you so much for having me. It's important for me to be here because I don't think my story is unique, but I don't think it's heard enough. I am a single mom of two. I'm a 38-year-old returning student. And until last year, I was a homeowner in New Haven. I'm a hard worker, and by societal standards, I have a good job. What this means is that I make enough money to afford a home, but too much money to afford any other sort of programs or assistance. So in Connecticut, when you can afford a home and a car, you can also afford childcare and healthcare and groceries and utilities and things of that nature. A little more about me. So it's taken me 20 years to finish my bachelor's, not for lack of will or lack of capacity. I have a 4.0. I was just accepted into the marriage and family therapy program for next year in grad school, but for lack of opportunity. I have had to sacrifice my education at numerous times because of financial instability, childcare, and the need for full-time employment. When I wanted to buy my home, I moved back in with my mom and my infant for 2 years, repaired my credit and saved a ton of money. And I sought out the perfect house in the Nathan Hale School District in New Haven at the end of the cul-de-sac, so I could have the basketball hoop and the cool snacks, right? Because if all the kids come to your house, you have your finger on the pulse and you know everything that's going on. Because when I was little, I was the one that went to everyone else's houses. My parents didn't know what was going on. So that was really my dream, and I made it come true. And I lived at the end of Neeland Road, and it was perfect, but it was so hard. Every month felt like I got away with something because I got it all. We were still there. We were fed, and we were still there. We didn't live lavishly. My last pay for the year was $64,000. So that's a good job by today's standards, but to raise a family and a home on that is not sustainable. We all go shopping at Goodwill, which is one of my passions, but we're not dressed lavishly. I drive a 2015 Mazda that I still pay for. I often go to the butcher counter at Ferraro's and say, John, I've got $32. What can I have this week? And he'll get me, whatever meat I can have for the week. And, I pulled it off for 2 years, but that's exactly what it was. It was pulling it off. And at what cost? How many resources were being held from my children because I was just, with inflation the way it is, the amount of hours I would have to work to pay for my housing and stay afloat would negate any sort of, resources we would gain from the position we had in the community as far as having a home. I had to make a really hard decision. And this came when my son has a brace on his left foot. He had a stroke when he was born, and he requires accommodating footwear. And 2 years ago, when they put a new brace on his foot, it required that he have 2 different size shoes, both accommodating footwear. And so this was going to be about $74. And $74 doesn't seem like a lot to most people. Most people, they don't have to check their bank account before they decide how much gas to put in their car. And it's embarrassing sometimes when I'm sharing a story, because I want to look like I have it all together. I want to look like I have $74 to tap into to get my kid his shoes. I was given a grandiose birthday gift that year, and it was a Tiffany's cuff. And I had never worn it because it was grandiose. And I sold it on Poshmark so I could get the money to buy my son 4 pairs of shoes so he can have 2 pairs of shoes so that one is dirty. I can wash it while he's wearing the other one. So 4 pairs of shoes so that he could wear his brace. And I realized that this is just not sustainable. I was working 5 12-hour shifts in the restaurant business, and what was left for my children at the end wasn't a parent that I'm proud to be. I had to make a really difficult choice, and I chose to sell my home so that I could pursue a career, one that would make me a better parent, that would make me more present, so that I could tuck them in at night, so that I could know what their friends' names are, what their interests are, their fears. And that's the most valuable resource we can provide as a parent. And when we are working so hard on that, in that habit trail, just going around and around and around, who's losing out? Yeah, okay, we have the house. I can say that we have something over our heads, but all my kids can say is that mom was a hard worker. I wasn't there. So I sold my home. I moved an hour away. I went back to school full time, and I am so grateful to have this opportunity. And I realize that most people don't. They don't have that pause button. They can't reassess their life at 38 and say, what kind of life do I want to give my kids? Because we're just trying to get by. They're the future, and they need parents. And the more that parents are trying to scramble to stay in place, that's less nights that they're tucking them in and asking them how their day was, and say, like I get the opportunity every night to say, Miles, what was your favorite thing about your day? What was your least favorite thing about the day? And what are you looking forward to tomorrow? And I shared at the beginning of this meeting that he asked me today, he said, Mom, what's this big important thing that you're doing? And he's like, are you nervous? And I'm like, yeah, I'm nervous. And I stopped and I said, I'm excited, because we have to have this growth mindset. And I had to let go of a lot in order to do this. And I don't think that we should have to choose between our home or our kids' future. And I'm just so grateful that there's this group of people that get together and acknowledge this and give people like me an opportunity to, say my story. And, hopefully it makes a difference. And I appreciate you all.
Natasha, thank you so much. I'm sure I'm reflecting the feelings of everyone who just listened to your story. That I'm so impressed. You have shown such strength of character, and you've been through clearly a lot. But it's so inspiring to know how you have made your way. It just shouldn't be this hard. And I think everyone here would agree it should not be this hard to raise children well in Connecticut. And Natasha, thank you for calling attention to the fact that your children, all of our children, that's the next generation in this state. So it's about your children, it's about the future of the state, and it shouldn't be this hard.
The ALICE statistics show there are many more stories like Natasha and her son out there. In addition, a separate ALICE report, The Pandemic Divide, showed households below the threshold suffered disproportionately during the pandemic. The value of studies like this are that when we know more, we can do more. We can look at steps to set vulnerable families on a firmer foundation. And if we can do that, the benefits to our children include helping them to be in a position not to come from behind, but to thrive and reach their potential. United Way of Greater Waterbury is creating opportunities to help increase the financial stability of ALICE families. From incentivized savings programs like ALICE Saves, providing financial coaching through Trust Plus, coaching and job training through the Financial Opportunity Center, or helping return over $1.6 million to local low-income families through volunteer income tax assistance. United Way is working to help stabilize families. They are also supporting children at every stage, providing books to preschoolers, mindfulness programs in high school, and volunteer opportunities through Upstarters. This report is a call to action to those of us with power and the passion to do something about it. This is about our children and the future of Greater Waterbury. I encourage everyone watching to take a deeper look at the Alice in Focus Children Report on the United Way website and join the conversation. Thank you for caring and your willingness to do more.